Let's just ram it. There we go. The Rams, they make the biggest trade so far this offseason. They added Trent McDuffie. We've been talking about it for a couple of months now, that the Rams needed to make a major move. They needed to make a move that signified that they were going to go all in for the Super Bowl next season. They were so close to winning the Super Bowl for the last 2 seasons, losing to the eventual Super Bowl champions. It was the Eagles on the road a year ago. And then we saw it happen this season. You lose to the Seahawks. You were so close. And at the same token, you truly weren't all in. So the fact that the Rams got as close as they did, yet they were not all in, it really tells you that this is an investment on the defensive side of the football. The Rams had one of the least expensive defenses in the National Football League for the last couple of seasons, and they add a player in Trent McDuffie that certainly fills their biggest need, and they do it with premier talent. Now, if you look at the package that the Rams had to give up to get him, you give up one of your first round picks, the number 29 overall pick, and that's not your number 13 pick, so it was your top selection. You had to give a first round pick at 29, which at that point, that's house money. And you're not going to get a cornerback as good as Trent McDuffie with the number 29 pick in this draft. At least it's extremely unlikely. And then you give up 2 other picks after that, the 5th round pick, a 6th round pick, and then a 2027 3rd round pick. So as far as a draft capital standpoint, it is somewhat of a hefty haul, especially considering the fact that you're going to have to pay him because he's going to sign a contract that's going to make him the highest paid cornerback in the National Football League. You have to give him $30 million. But here's the thing. It's not going to have that big of an impact on future contracts. I've seen people out there saying, oh, Trent McDuffie, how could you make Trent McDuffie the highest paid cornerback when he's not the best cornerback, when he's not Sauce Gardner, when he's not as good on the outside? Well, the truth is, if you know ball, you know that the salary cap has eclipsed $300 million for the first time in league history. And you also know that it will not impact the Rams until 2028, most likely. So the truth is by the time that this new contract, which Albert Breer says is going to be something in the ballpark of $30 million per season, which will make him the highest paid cornerback in the National Football League, by the time this contract is going to impact the Rams roster build, we'll know already if this was the right move. Because at that point, the odds of Matthew Stafford being your quarterback are unlikely. The odds that you're going to have the rest of that 2023 draft class that includes Byron Young, Kobe Turner, Puka Nacua, Steve Avila. We know that Puka's a lock to get a big deal. That's a no-brainer. They won't even think twice about that even for a split second. But I do think that this deal that they made was an indication that they have internally made a decision on one of those guys. Now, can you pay all those guys? You can, but that's not smart business. You don't want to completely landlock your roster completely. And Trent McDuffie is certainly a player that fits what the Rams needed. I mean, even though he's not this elite outside corner, he's solid to good. And he is elite in the slot. And with a better pass rush, with Chris Shula and how they scheme with a bend but don't break style, Trent McDuffie certainly is going to give them what they need. So when I hear people out there saying, he's not the best cornerback, so why would you give him the best money? That's not what's important to the Rams. What's important to the Rams is he's the best cornerback on the Rams by miles and miles and miles, and it's not even close. And he has had success on the outside. I mean, in 2024, he was a second-team All-Pro as an outside cornerback. I mean, a lot of that could be due to reputation, but he didn't allow more than 53 yards receiving in a single game last year. He's never allowed a 100-yard game going up against him in his career. So he does have a really good track record. It backs it up. And also, when you look at what the Rams have done, this was a move that they were able to make because of how much success that they have had with their draft picks. There's this whole, the F them picks here, right? The truth is that what the Rams were doing in the last 3-4 seasons, it was not the F them picks era. It was the yes them picks era. It was, you got any more of those picks? Because we're trying to make picks. We are trying to do that. And that is how you put yourselves in a position to avoid a down to the studs type of rebuild where you're forcing yourself to basically blow it all up. And you know that when they make the decisions they make as far as player personnel, that it's always to set themselves up to be able to take a big swing like they were able to do. I mean, just look at what the Rams have done. They've done what most teams aren't able to do. And that is go all the way in multiple times with the same coach, with some of the same players. A lot of times we've seen this. Look at the Denver Broncos a couple years ago with Russell Wilson. We've seen teams try to do what the Rams have done, but they skip the part where they actually win the Super Bowl. And when you look at what Leslie and Sean McVay and the Rams have done the last couple of seasons, I mean, this is one of the most impressive reloads and mini rebuilds that we've ever seen in the history of the National Football League. Everyone talks about what the Dodgers are doing in this city. People are wanting to see what the Lakers can do in this city. And you talk about the Luka Doncic trade. I think what the Rams have done is as impressive as what the Dodgers have done, for the simple fact that you're doing it in a league that has a salary cap that you have to hit right on guys. And just look at what they've done with their draft pick since 2022. They got the best, or arguably the best, at least a guy that you could say is firmly in that mix with Jackson Smith and Jigba and Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson and the best receivers in the league. They got one of those guys with their fourth pick in the 5th round. They picked Puka Nacua up in round 5. Steve Avila, guard that's been a really good starter that has some Pro Bowl potential, in round 2. Warren McClendon, they picked up in round 5, and he's going to take over as their starting right tackle. Kyron Williams, round 5. Braden Fisk, last season, it was the most aggressive trade up that we've seen in the NFL draft in almost a decade, and they get him in round 2. Quality. Kobe Turner, one of the best at his position in the league, they get him in round 3. Of all these names, the only one that was the first round pick was Jared Verse, and he's a guy that has defensive player of the year level potential. They took him in the first round. Cam Kinchins, round 3. Quentin Lake, round 6. Kobe Durant, round 4. They even got Ethan Evans, a punter out of Wingate. Where is even Wingate? They're the Wingate Bulldogs, by the way. They get him in round 7. He's been really good. Then on top of that, they've hit on UDFAs, Alaric Jackson, Omar Speights. You got a left tackle in Alaric Jackson that's been your starting left tackle at one of the most important positions in all of sports. So have they missed on some guys? Yes, there's the Tutu Atwells where you could have Creed Humphreys. Yes, there are some picks and some misses there. But still, the reason why they're able to make the trade to get Trent McDuffie is not because they're the big bad Rams and the F them picks. It's because of the picks that they made. It was the yes them picks era that led to the F them picks era. That's what I'm calling it. And yes, if we are going to move on to that, you can even go deeper than that. Terrence Ferguson last year, Josiah Stewart, both promising young players as well. So give the Rams a lot of credit. They draft better than any team right now in the National Football League, arguably, and they're not even doing it with first round picks. They've had one first round pick since 2017, and they put themselves in a really advantageous position. Now, as far as Trent McDuffie, still continuing to do the deep dive on him, there's a lot of data that does suggest, okay, is he solid to good as an outside? Sure. Is he elite as a slot? The answer is yes. Now, something you need to know about him are that he's young. He's 25. It's a young player's position. You're not going to really have a lot of success with those 30-plus-year-old cornerbacks at this point. So when you consider that, that means that the only time that you can really acquire these guys is via draft or via trade. And here's some stats you got to know about Trent McDuffie. Here's some stats you got to know that will make you feel pretty good about him. He's one of the best tackling quarterbacks in the NFL. As a quarterback, he's caused 6 forced fumbles. And that's one of his strengths, is he's a great tackler. He's not just a willing tackler. He's someone that can play with a certain level of physicality. He had an 83.1 tackle grade per PFF. That was second among all cornerbacks last season. Only Christian Gonzalez had a higher grade as a tackler. And that's something this Rams team has just not had. And then also, like I said, this is someone that does not allow himself to get cooked. We saw too many games last season. Rams cornerbacks looking like barbecue brisket out there. They had no answers. And McDuffie is someone that, he can blow up a game and shut down a certain area. And I look at kind of my initial grade on this trade. If I'm going to throw out a grade, I think it's an A trade. I really do. This is an A trade for the simple fact that they had a need, they filled that need, and they did it with what I think is going to be the best cornerback that's going to change teams this offseason. I think you look at free agency, you look at trades, you look at the draft. I think that when we have this conversation this time next year, we'll say that the cornerback that changed helmets and changed jerseys, he's going to be the very best guy to do that. And it's kind of wild too, when you look at just all the history. I mean, he said back in August, he was asked, hey, if you could play for another team, who would that team be? He said, well, it'd be the Los Angeles Rams because that's where my family's from. They can come see my games. He also played with Jimmy Lake, who coached him at Washington. And from what I've heard is that Sean McVay and Les Snead and the Rams, and if you guys watch my other show about the Rams, Locked On Rams, I mentioned multiple times throughout this offseason that I thought Trent McDuffie was the number one target they needed to go after. And I was hearing that Jimmy Lake was telling Sean McVay and the rest of this organization, like, we got to go get this guy. And he was a big reason why. So he reunites with Jimmy Lake. So yeah, it's exciting things. It's exciting stuff just because this is a Rams team that they have a really good sense of when they know when to go all in. And you look at last year, for example, everyone thought the Rams should have gone all in last season because they felt like it could have been Matthew Stafford's last season as the Rams quarterback. And what did they end up doing? They ended up trading out of the first round. They made a trade with the Atlanta Falcons to get their pick, which they used on James Pierce, who was bad, then really good, then did a lot of weird stuff in the offseason. And now they've got the luxury of having a war chest that allows them to go out there and make a move. So yeah, I mean, other connections. It's from Southern California. Like I said, it's also Quint Lake's teammate in high school. It's from Westminster, California. He's going home to SoCal. He started at Modern Day High School where he played with Quint Lake. Then he transferred to Servite, then St. John Bosco. This dude's like trying to play for every single premier high school program in SoCal. And then he went and he was a Husky and he played for Washington. And I think that familiarity is going to help. I think he is going to a Chiefs team that was a perennial Super Bowl contender. And then now you go to a Rams team that now they're the betting favorites to win the Super Bowl, playing at home, and you're going to get a bag. So he's played with Puka Nacua at Washington. He played with Rams DB coach Jimmy Lake. And yeah, it's going to be, I think this is a great, great fit. The only thing that would make this not a great fit is if he on the outside does not perform well. And he ranks in the top 10 in slot corners in yards per snap allowed, passer rating allowed since 2022. So all the metrics, all the data backs up that he's elite from that standpoint. I think what the Rams should do is move him inside. I don't think they should put him in a position that doesn't optimize him. As an outside cornerback the last 2 years, He's had a 74.7 and a 79.2 coverage grade. And it's been a pretty decent sample size. But where you really take advantage of him is the pressure that they can get from him. Steve Spagnuolo in Kansas City, he used McDuffie, used him as a blitzer. He rushed the quarterback 146 times and had a pressure on 34 of those. He has 5.5 sacks and 15 QB hits in his career. And those 34 pressures in that span are the most by any cornerback in the NFL since 2022. So the other thing I wondered too is, will Chris Shula have some different packages for him? Because Chris Shula is not a heavy blitz type of defensive coordinator. The Rams, bottom of the league towards it, had a blitz rate around 17%. And that usually is something that tells you that you have a really good front, because you don't need to send guys, because you can get consistent pressure along your defensive line. But now you got a different weapon. You got a different bullet that you can fire off. And I think that with him, I want to see McDuffie sent more in 2026. So, yeah, I mean, he's really unique. He really is unique. Here's a good stat that will allow you to understand that this is not just your run-of-the-mill, really good all-pro cornerback. This is someone who's unique in what he brings to the field. Defensive backs with 25-plus pass defense, 15-plus QB hits, and 10-plus tackles for loss since 2022, Trent McDuffie is the only cornerback in the NFL to be able to do that. You got Kyle Hamilton, Derwin James, Antoine Winfield Jr. They can do that, but we're talking about basically a guy that can play with the physicality of a really good dominant safety or even a linebacker at times, but also has the quick twitch, the ability to move those hips and play with the game in front of you, moving backwards like a really good cornerback. So I'm happy I get my guy. This is something that you guys were joking with us on my other show that we've been pushing for this because we thought that was going to happen. No, it happened because it just made too much sense. But all right, we got some comments. We got that's a lot of picks to give Mario Landaverdi. You got to put everything in context. Like, if this is for a team that's not all in, then you say, wow, yeah, that is a lot of draft capital, because you're giving up picks for a position where the Rams, since Jalen Ramsey, haven't heavily invested in that position. And a lot of this is going to come down to a couple of things too. Is the second thing is, do they draft more cornerbacks, which is something that they could do from what I'm hearing. Also, what's your current stock of Emmanuel Forbes? Because Emmanuel Forbes had his ups and downs. What's a reclamation project? He's the only other guy on the roster right now that can play on the outside. So either you're going to have to sign someone else, draft someone else, or you're going to believe in Emmanuel Forbes, and also has this impact Quentin Lake. We got the nice shirt, D-Mac. Thank you. Muad'Dib says we need like one starter from the draft. This draft is great because now we can finally get some depth. I still think there's a possibility that the Rams, if their guy is not available at 13, I still think they should go playmaker. If Carnell Tate fell to them, that'd be incredible. Mekhi Lemon could be available. And we'll see if some of these elite defenders are available because of some of these little warning flags they've had, like Ruben Bain and Caleb Downs. That's another interesting thought as well. But if those guys aren't available, they're number one targets. I certainly think there's a world where we can see what we did last year, where Les Snead trades out of the first round with that 13th pick to get more picks. Maybe you save that for a quarterback in next year's draft. Maybe you save that to just replenish some of those picks and to get more depth. Personally, I want to get the best playmaker available and just make this offense absolutely as unstoppable. And that's where you really kind of look at. Now, the Rams' next move they can make, I think that's ultimately going to be something that we're going to see after the new year begins on Wednesday and in the draft. I know that everyone now wants to see Max Crosby on the Rams. Well, it does make a lot of sense if you're just absolutely going to empty the clip. He's certainly on the table. He's certainly someone that the Rams are keeping tabs on. Albert Breer said a couple of days ago that the Rams, along with the Cowboys, Bears, Ravens, Bills, Patriots, and Eagles, are keeping tabs on Max Crosby. But that's gonna require your first round pick. And I think if you're not going to pay Byron Young, and Byron Young can be included in that deal, would I trade Byron Young, my number 13 pick, and the willingness to absorb Max Crosby's big contract? That would be an extremely bold move, because a Max Crosby can end a football game. No one's ever going to be an Aaron Donald unless you're Lawrence Taylor, Reggie White, or a Myles Garrett. Like, we're talking about the elite of the elite. Like, those guys aren't walking through that door, and Max Crosby certainly is not that, but he certainly is the guy that could end a game. And right now, it doesn't feel like the Rams are right at the top of the Max Crosby sweepstakes. Right now, it's feeling like it could be the Bears, and the Bears are another team. They're in on the Max Crosby sweepstakes. And then the Dallas Cowboys, there's some talk that the Cowboys want to pair him with Quinnen Williams. So as far as the next move, I think right now the Rams are kind of waiting to let free agency develop, wait till that draft gets here, and then we'll see that next move. I wouldn't be shocked if they go out there and go crazy on Max Crosby, because I can tell you from the Rams standpoint that edge rusher, pass rushers, that is one of the top 3 positions that the Rams are always going to invest heavily in. But it does feel like they made their big swing in Trent McDuffie. All right, some more comments here. We got Young Braveheart. That's a waste of picks for a slot corner. I mean, that's the thing. It makes me cringe when I hear this around from people saying that he's just going to be a slot corner. I mean, that the truth is, I gave you the numbers. You guys know my saying. I bring my facts to the fight. I don't just say things. There's usually a number that backs it up, and it tells you that, yes, he's not elite as a outside corner. And is he as good as Jalen Ramsey was when they traded for him? No, but he can certainly do that. And I think, too, there's a world where you could say his best football could be in front of him. I mean, I think with a really good pass rush again, I think that he improves from that standpoint. We got the going all in. I respect that. I appreciate it as a fan from Topher's. La Puente in the house. Pablo Ramos. Fun fact, my dad went to La Puente High School, and he said he would sneak into Dodgers games. And I'm like, how could you even do that these days? But apparently they would do it, sneak into Dodger Stadium back in the day. So shout out to La Puente. The Tomahawk is, I think, their newspaper or something.